I recently found myself in the middle of nowhere with a remote people called the Hadzabe. My friend Nathan and I ventured into the unknown bush of East Africa to join God in sparking a disciple-making movement among an unreached tribal group that worships the sun. I had the privilege of seeing many tribals come to Jesus and learning God's story. I saw an elder of a village baptized and begin to trust Jesus even more than the evil spirits he had interacted with his entire life. I saw unreached people hear God's word in their language for the first time. I saw the sick healed. I saw Jesus speak to the discouraged. I saw hope for the hopeless. I saw God drawing people from every tribe, tongue, and nation, even among the most forgotten, remote people. How did I find myself in such a place at such a time as this? It all began with God's vision. A few years back, my life hit a fork in the road, and I have never been the same ever since. I have always had a knack for adventure and been a bit of a thrill seeker. So, I made it my life vision to attend the Air Force Academy and join Special Forces or become a fighter pilot. I worked for my own vision for 5 years and ended up being nominated by a vice president and senator for both West Point and the United States Air Force Academy. But God had different plans. The summer before I would have become an Air Force cadet, I found myself at a camp listening to a speaker named Caleb Bislow. I was intrigued by his stories of the gospel advancing in dark, dangerous, and despised places around the world. Caleb shared about the importance of listening to God's voice, something I'd really never actively done before. So I said, all right, I'll give this a try. I prayed, God, do you have anything to speak to me? And at that moment, I saw a picture or a vision in my head of a dark field overcome by fire and a bright light. The match had been lit. My life was changed and I didn't even know it yet. That same week, God spoke, you are willing to risk your life for your country. Would you do that for me? And through some intentional times of prayer, God led me to surrender my life vision for His. God spoke to me as I read Romans 1, and Paul's calling became one that I was called to. You are set apart for the gospel, called to be an apostle, obligated to preach to the wise and to the foolish. And God revealed to me that my wise would be those who already knew Christ but could grow deeper in passion for Him, and the foolish, those who don't yet know Jesus in unreached, dangerous places around the world. And so, the movement began. God began to open doors to live out such a calling. I began to travel and share the hope of Christ with the hopeless. People began to ask me to come and speak. I began to see the book of Acts open and alive in the present tense. During my most recent venture into the land of the Hadza people, I believe God truly has sparked a disciple-making movement. And much of the movement lies at the heart of a woman named Mariamu. Mariamu, the only Hadza woman who knows English, acted as our translator. We worked with her to translate Bible stories into their isolated click language and empowered her to live a life of laboring for God and His kingdom advancement. During the first few weeks of the trip, Mariamu committed her life to Christ, and I began to see the work of God's Spirit inside of her. I asked, has God spoken to you, or has anything changed since you committed to Christ? She joyfully looked at me and said, yes, there is hope in my heart. And I hear God saying to me, do not be afraid of the difficulty. I will be with you. Before we left her home village, Mariamu spoke to me. Last night I was praying for God to open doors for the Hadza people, and I had a dream. I remember God speaking to me, begin to teach at Mambos' village. This is an unreached village near Mariamu's home, and she has already begun to obey God's prompting. She even taught them Bible stories for an entire day the week before we left. There also was a young Hadza man who wanted to know more about following Jesus, and he wanted to commit his life to Christ, and so he came and asked Mariamu about it, because it's so evident that her life has been changed, even to the people around her. A middle-aged Hadza man named Musa is now a Christian, and so Mariamu gave him an audio Bible with the stories we translated, along with a picture storing cloth. She sent him off to go share the hope of Christ in another unreached Hadza village. These are only a few of the people who are now sharing the hope of Christ, not to mention various others who have been discipled and sent out. We are only a tiny spark, but I know a wildfire is coming. God is raising up laborers for the kingdom here, there, and worldwide. Will you join the movement?